So this is my menu for the first week. Well, that starts New Year's Day. It's actually going to be a Black Eyed Pea Gumbo and some of the chard. I'm going to attempt an egg souffle on Thursday. It is my last day off for the holiday. Friday is a jambalaya because we're having a game night. Saturday, I have no idea what we're doing. We're going to a friend's house for a D&D game, and it's my birthday. I've been promised some lemon macarons. And then Sunday, I'm thinking about egg timbales. And I had some fun with the dry erase board. And these are some of the meats that I found in the freezer so far. Stuff I found in the freezer so far without digging too hard. The chicken and the andouille, of course, is going to be for the jambalaya, as is the shrimp. So this is a more contemporary cookbook that I acquired in Natchitoches, Louisiana a few years ago. So a little backstory on this. When I was a child, my grandfather's parents lived next door to my grandparents. But his family was originally from Natchitoches, Louisiana. And whenever I would come over, my mom would bring me over on a Friday after school. And I would head in the side door where we parked, out the front door of my grandparents' house, and next door to my great-grandparents. And my great-grandmother would feed me. Usually it was things like biscuits and gravy, which was one of my favorite foods. But pretty much I would eat anything she made. After she had gone into a home, and we had our New Year's family gatherings where I was expected to eat black eyed peas, and I would absolutely refuse because I hated them. Matter of fact, I hated all beans that my grandmother served me. And she would comment about how I would eat her mother-in-law's, but I would not eat her black eyed peas. One of my memories of them is that great-grandma's had okra in it. So I've been on the lookout to try to figure out what it was. So when I was in Natchitoches on a vacation a few years ago, I found this cookbook, and it had a black eyed pea recipe. And I decided to give this a try. I didn't follow it exactly. I didn't have any okra because I am trying to do a pantry clean out. I didn't have any parsley. What's in the garden is just a tiny bit. And I used dry beans instead of canned. I just cooked up 2 cups of dried beans in the Instapot the night before. And otherwise, I followed this exactly. Most of the ham came from our Thanksgiving ham that was refrozen after it had been cooked. And the rest of the day involved attempting some bacon and cheddar biscuits for breakfast. And then this was lunch and dinner. And we worked in the garden the rest of the day. So starting with breakfast, I decided to attempt to recreate a bacon and cheddar biscuit with a honey butter that we had at my wife's favorite restaurant. So it's my typical biscuit recipe, except since I used buttermilk powder, I went ahead and put that in with the dry ingredients. And then added cold water at the end. I used a 1/4 cup of cheddar cheese and probably 2 slices of bacon, but I could have easily used 3 or 4. Basically, my daughter had, when she moved in, came in with a few pounds of bacon, and we had cooked up a little bit of it previously, so I finished cooking up the package. I still have some cooked bacon in there. I think y'all have seen me do the biscuits in the past, so I'm not going to talk too much about that, but it's your typical buttermilk biscuit recipe, but I added the cheese and bacon in the beginning. And about this point, I realized I am using the wrong piece on my KitchenAid, and I had to switch it out, the bread hook that for some reason I was using, with the pastry knife, which was much more effective at cutting the butter into the dry ingredients. I'm going to say I really like using the buttermilk powder in its dry form first, because see how easy that mixed up. And then I just dusted my board with some more all-purpose flour. I actually don't think I have enough all-purpose flour to make biscuits again. We'll see. But I still have plenty of bread flour, whole wheat flour, rye flour, and various other sundry types. And I just rolled out all of the dough per usual and folding it 8 times and then rolling it out some more and cutting it. As you can see, they turned out to be absolutely beautiful biscuits. And that honey butter was really good. I used it with some salted butter that I found in my fridge. My mother-in-law must have put it there because I don't typically buy salted butter. But for this, it worked really well. And this was absolutely delicious. I think my wife ended up having 4 of these biscuits today. So New Year's Eve, I'd stuck 2 cups of dried black eyed peas in the Instapot and cooked them. And then in the morning, I started by making my roux for the gumbo. I'm not really sure this counts as a gumbo. It was a very nice stew, though. But it called for 2/3 cups of oil and 2/3 cup of flour. And just warm and stir constantly until you get a dark color, kind of like a old penny color. Then I added in the onion and bell pepper. And this is when I realized I had not chopped the celery beforehand. So I had to stop and do that and add that to the pot as well. And then I just sauteed the vegetables in this roux until they were nice and tender before adding the remaining ingredients. Of course, there was garlic. And even though it was not part of the original recipe, I added some tasso per my wife's request. Probably should have added a little bit more for a little bit more flavor for it, but it still turned out well. And this was my last 2 cans of diced tomatoes. I guess I'm going to have to use tomato sauce for the jambalaya later in the week. And that's the last of the Thanksgiving ham, plus a little bit of ham I bought a few days ago. I still have some ham in the fridge to probably have for sandwiches or something this week. And then all the black eyed peas. And then I used the tomato can to fill with water and add additional water to this to thin out the broth because it was awfully thick at this stage. And lastly, a couple of bay leaves and stirring it up and letting it simmer for a while. I would like to point out this huge pile of beautiful Swiss chard came out of my garden. I'm personally impressed. I separated the greens from the stems and proceeded to chop the stems. Look at that pile of stems. All those different colors. Are they not beautiful? With the red and the white and the orange. And then I set the stems aside and started working on chopping up that huge pile of leaves. This was some work. So that bacon I cooked up for the biscuits, well, I saved the drippings and some of it went in the pan to cook all the Swiss chard. I added just a pinch of crushed red pepper and cooked that in the bacon vat to add just a little bit of flavor to the mix. And then I started cooking the stems first. I do this to get them a little bit more tender before I add the greens. As you see, they don't really cook down as much as the greens here will, but they do get a little bit translucent. And then I added in all of that chopped greens and a little bit of water to help it steam in the pot. And after stirring it a little bit, I just covered the pot to cook for a bit. And it only took a few minutes to get it to this stage. And as you see, the greens cooked down a whole lot. At this point, I'm tasting it to see what it needs because I'm not sure how much salt was in the bacon. So I did add a little bit more salt and quite a bit of pepper. I do like black pepper. I cooked up some basmati rice in the Instapot because that's what my child had brought home from her apartment in college, and served that on top of the black eyed pea stew. It's not so much a gumbo. So this has been our New Year's project. We started at New Year's Eve, finished at New Year's Day. Pretty excited about it. We built these new garden beds, I guess November. It was in time for me to put my garlic and onion in the bed, but not much of anything else. So everything is still kind of tiny. And now we have a significant cold snap coming through. So I've got my garden cover to go over everything. If you're interested, I've got mostly lettuces here in between the garlic. And then we start onion. There's some kale and bok choy in between the onion here. And more onion. And then I've got radishes. As you can see, we have stomped all over this bed while we were putting in the trellis. Same goes for this bed that had beets, turnips, and carrots in it. I've got a few turnips coming up, but it looks like we pretty much decimated this bed too, especially the end that had the carrots. But this work is done that we're going to need for spring. We also put in, I'm not sure if you can see it, another cattle panel trellis there that's going to be blackberries. Yes, I still need to get the zinnia cleaned out. We have one blackberry and one raspberry currently there, and I'm going to get a few more blackberries to finish out that bed. And that's the brick pathway I've started on and not finished. I am hoping to have it done by spring planting. As far as the pantry clean out this year, we are allowing ourselves a date night because we are now living in a household with 5 adults and me and my wife need some time alone. And we're also going to allow us up to once a week of socializing with friends as an excuse to eat out, because that's also extremely important to us. But thank you for watching if you've actually made it this far into it. Thank you.